Back when the weather was warm, a subscriber asked if I'd do a history of ice fishing, and I said, you know what? I think I'm going to go ahead and make that happen. Seemed like the thing to do. You know how it is. The weather's warm. You don't think about the punishment that ice fishing can give you. Ice fishing's a sport, an activity that's common all the way across Canada and the northern portion of the United States. And it's something that I discovered as a young kid because I come from a family of people that do all kinds of outdoor sports. And ice fishing was something that we took seriously. We got up early in the morning to get on the ice as the sun was coming up, and we went all over the place. And we found out early that it could be a real community thing. You'd go out ice fishing and see whole families out there, little kids, big kids, elderly people, men and women, all having fun. For my family, there were two ways of ice fishing: using tip-ups, like you can see here, or using a jig, which my uncle really liked to do, but I never really did it much as a kid. Tip-ups or traps are basically an automated system whereby you hang bait, and if a fish strikes the bait, a flag will go up letting you know there's a fish on, and then you proceed to the tip-up and work your magic. Are you going to catch him, or is he going to get away? Now, where we live, we catch a lot of warm water fish like pickerel and bass and perch through the ice. Trout are kind of a bonus, but they're out there too. So we typically went to lakes where you could get a lot of action. So it meant a lot of pickerel and perch for my uncle on his jig pole. And I remember I was 16 when my uncle decided that he was going to do something big. And during the February vacation, with his backpack camper, he, myself, and my other uncle headed north to go to a place that made me think about ice fishing in a completely different way, Lake Champlain. The plan was to spend 3 nights on the ice in the camper, targeting walleye and perch and maybe some pike, and we were all prepared. My uncle had plenty of tip-ups. I was going to be the power auger guy. I was looking forward to it until I found out that we got 15 apiece instead of the 5 we got back in Massachusetts, which meant I was going to be busy. When we got to Virgins, Vermont, we went into a restaurant to get something to eat, and as I got out of the back of the truck in the snow, a bunch of people came running out of the restaurant yelling, "We won! We won! We beat the Russians!" Now, this was the middle of the Cold War, and the Olympics were going on. And this was the very night, at the very time, that the American hockey team beat the Russians, which was very improbable if you know anything about it. And for me, it's one of those moments frozen in my memory where I know right where I was when I heard about it. Well, anyways, we got to Lake Champlain, and when the sun came up the next day, I was shocked. The shanty towns that surrounded us on all sides, the roads that were plowed by F-250s to provide access to these shanty towns, it was something I wasn't ready for. Drilling the holes and realizing my boots weren't as good as I thought they were. All of this stuff, including the number of walleye and perch we caught, hooked me on ice fishing.
It's still running?
There. We got a chance here, Tom. We got a chance.
We're doing some high-tech stuff here, Stan. We're going all the way around.
Oh! Yes!
Pickerel!
Ha ha ha! Yes! So while on YouTube, attention spans can be short. If you're still with me, ice fishing was going on in Europe all through what we would call the Middle Ages, during what is known as the Little Ice Age, where Northern Europe was in the grip of a climate cool down and famines swept the land. Ice fishing provided the sustenance that many families needed to make it through the long winter. In fact, tip-ups were even invented in Holland. Now, when those Europeans finally make it to the New World in the 16th century, they're going to find that the native people of the North are in fact ice fishing. And one of the great events in the early history of New England, King Philip's War, actually began with the death on the ice while ice fishing of a native named John Sassamon. When his body was found, the native people said that he had fallen through the ice and slit his throat on the sharp shards, while the English said he had been murdered and deposited in a hole in the ice. Anyways, we don't know what kind of ice fishing he was really doing. While he could have been clubbing fish using a decoy, which was a common practice, it's more probable that he was trying to spear them. And what native people would do in either of these practices would be that they would dig a fairly good sized hole in the ice and then put a wigwam over the top or some skins, and they would lie in ambush, often using a fish decoy to lure in an unsuspecting trout or pike, at which point they'd try to get that fish close enough to the surface so they could spear or club the unsuspecting fish, which was in pursuit of that decoy I mentioned. In addition to clubbing and spearing, native people also jigged fish out of the water using a small fishing pole, basically a stick, with catgut or yellow birch fiber tied to it. They used a variety of other lines as well, and some sort of bait on a bone or even stone hook, and they could be very successful in this technique. You probably know that the native First Nations of the New World originated in what we call Siberia, following the land bridge or paddling in boats along the coast pursuing sea mammals. The last of these people arrived here around 10,000 years ago, purportedly, and on the other side of the Bering Strait, the people of Yakutia today practice a technique that I'm almost certain our native people did. So we have to talk about netting. The people of Siberia, whether they're First Nations Yakuts or exiled Old Believers, are tied to the land like few other people on the planet, and they really love their fishing. And of course, due to the climate, they're ice fishing 7 months of the year. Now, native techniques over there still persist and have been learned by the exiles like the Old Believers. One of the techniques that's just mind-blowing is how they'll drill a series of holes and then push a net under the ice from hole to hole with long birch poles, draping the net for maybe 100 yards under the ice. For the Yakut people, this is a solemn and special moment, and often done with the Old Believers, who they live side by side with, is very communal. They'll come out, the entire village, and they'll operate in groups. And they have a technique that makes the network even better, where they will drive the fish across the pond using long sticks that they wave around under the ice in a line. One line following another line, moving closer and closer to the net. And they get great catches doing this, and it probably gets them out of the house too, and they enjoy a celebration and quite a fish fry when it's all over. These are people who were either exiled or taken from their tribal ways and forced to live in villages by first the czars and then the communists, and now they're being pretty much ignored by those in control of Russia today. They ignore limits. I mean, they're going to get away with what they can get away with, and because trade has broken down so badly in the Siberian village areas, they don't worry about it. Many of these fish are used to feed their dogs and kept frozen. I mean, you catch a fish when it's 40 below zero, it tends to freeze pretty quick. So I anticipate that this netting technique and other netting techniques were certainly used by the native peoples of North America when they ice fished, as we find net weights all over the northern part of North America, which suggests that the technique is in fact used. Now, in the American tradition, we have records of Europeans who were out with bands of native people, especially French, following in the footsteps of those native people and engaging in the fish decoy spearing techniques and jigging up fish as early as the 18th century. Later, when the native people are gone, ice fishing becomes a subsistence method for people that are looking for food on the table. Ice fishing isn't angling. It doesn't seem to attract those gentlemanly sort. It's a very working man thing to do. The idea of going out on a freezing cold day and chopping a hole in the ice to try to get yourself a meal was what made ice fishing appealing to people. There were never a lot of Orvis cowboys involved in ice fishing. The people that are doing it are people that need the meat. Now, in the last 50 years in America, ice fishing has become a little bit more genteel as we see advancements in techniques, tools, and technologies. The introduction of flashers to ice fishing and later sounders, as well as underwater cameras that let you look down beneath the surface of the ice and see what you've always been imagining. And the ability to see the fish, whether they're a sonar signature or the real thing, really increases your confidence. And you know what else increases your confidence? The ability to drill through the ice easily and cleanly. First with those gas augers, and now with these beautiful new electric augers of all sorts. I use a power drill with a special auger head on it, and boy does it work, allowing me with a very light sled to travel around the lake and just drill holes and drop the jig down. And then there are the amenities. At the beginning of the video, I was talking about the punishing quality of ice fishing, and anybody that's been doing it a while knows that if you're out there on a cold day and it's windy, it's miserable. Well, there's been quite a lot of advances in the field of ice tents. So if you pick one of those up for a couple $100 and a little buddy heater, your life is going to change pretty quickly, and the punishment of the old school days on the ice will be a distant memory. So even with the changes in technology, it's still all about getting outside and exploring the wonder of a frozen lake and the little treasures down below, the thrill of hooking something and reeling it on in, and hopefully letting more go than you keep. I hope you enjoyed this little history of ice fishing, and we'll be bringing you more like it on Fishing Historic Places.